Hey everybody, did you miss me? I am back from Iceland and Ireland. We are ready to get you ready for game week 5. Here we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about starting pitching and then we're going to head into the hitting. We now have this season's data going off the first couple starts of the year. So a small sample, but I wanted to use this year's data as it becomes more accurate as the season goes on. Just take these with a grain of salt as this is only a couple starts. Ronel Blanco comes out as the top-rated player this week. Not real dominant, only 11 strikeouts in 15 innings. He's walked 6 guys, but nobody can touch this guy. 1 hit in 15 innings. He's put up 35.3 points per start in his 2 starts this year. Slight edge to a pitcher's park this week. Projection of 34.18 still puts him atop the list. Just to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here, we've calculated the Sorare points over those 2 starts. We've got a points per start average that just divides the points by the number of starts made. We've got our park factor. So some parks are hitter's parks, some parks are pitcher's parks. In this case, Blanco's throwing in a pitcher's park this weekend. And SOB stands for a lot of things, but in this case, it stands for strikeout bonus. Strikeouts are huge and so rare. You get 2 points per strikeout for each pitcher. So what I've done here is I've looked at how far above and below percentage-wise each team is from the mean strikeout percentage for Major League Baseball, which is about 22.5%. In this case, Houston faces Texas this weekend. Texas is well below that, 4 percentage points below the league average. They strike out about 18.5% of the time. So I'm multiplying his projection by the 0.96. I'm taking that 4% off. And in other cases, say like Imanaga for the Cubs faces Seattle. Seattle strikes out a lot. They are the top strikeout team, 7% above the league average. So I've added 7% to his score just to give a little bump to the pitchers pitching against lineups that strike out a lot, because this does make a big difference in how your pitchers will score. So Blanco tops the list, 34.18 based on his 2 starts. Tanner Houck's been really dominant, 17 strikeouts in 12 innings, still hasn't given up a run this year. He's facing an LA lineup that is striking out a little more than league average. They do play in Boston, so the park factor hurts him a little bit as it is a really good hitter's park, but he still gets a 33.78, so top play other than Blanco. I should explain what the colors mean. The green means these starters have been confirmed. As RotoWire indicates, the boldface type indicates that they are an announced starter. If it is not in boldface, this is their projected starter. They're usually right, but things change here and there. When the teams announce their starters for the weekend and it becomes boldface, I'll change these yellows to greens. But as of now, I think you can probably go with any of the yellows you want, but the greens have been confirmed. One other thing to think about, too, with all these rainouts early in the seasons and postponements, sometimes having the guy that's pitching on Sunday isn't the greatest idea. The first 2 guys are much more likely to go. If there is a rainout, say on a Saturday, usually the Saturday pitcher will be pushed back to Sunday and the Sunday will push back to Monday. Well, that doesn't help you if you're playing for this game week and your Sunday guy just got bumped and you took a 0. So it's always better to take the guy at the front of the game week rather than at the back. But sometimes you just want the guy in the back because it's a better matchup. You take that risk. Some other good options for you this weekend. Reed Detmers pitching in Boston, so really good hitter's park. That's a little bit of a detriment to him, but not enough to knock him down the list. He's been so good. 11 innings, 19 strikeouts, 1.64 ERA. He's got a couple of wins already. Been pitching really well. I wouldn't hesitate to throw him back out there against Boston. They do strike out quite a bit. So a strikeout pitcher against a lineup that strikes out a lot. It's a good matchup for you. Imanaga goes out to Seattle. Really good pitcher's park against a lineup that strikes out a ton. So this all lines up for Imanaga. 32.93. I like him this weekend. Skubal's an ace. Pitching at home against a Minnesota team that strikes out quite a bit. He's up over 30 as well. Corbin Burns, another ace. Over 30 for a projection for him. Crochet has been amazing this year. Way better than I anticipated. Will it last? I'm not sure. He's got the Reds. They strike out a lot. He's at home. It's a decent park to pitch in, and over 30 for him as well. So you can see some of this list. My philosophy on pitching, at least right now, is I wouldn't spend a ton of money on pitchers because they seem to be blowing out their arms at an alarming rate. You can find matchups. You can find good plays game week to game week instead of going with 1 or 2 aces and just hoping they don't get injured. I like to have a stable of cheaper guys that I can rotate through. I've actually started Martin Perez for the Pirates 3 straight game weeks, or 3 out of 4, probably whenever he's been pitching, and he's done well in all 3, and I got him for $1. Deals are out there to be had. Spend that money on the hitters instead. Much lower injury risk. Others to consider, so Spencer Turnbull's been really good for Philly. Got him up over 29 for projection. Tyler Anderson, so both of these guys are going to be pretty cheap. Sean Manaea is probably pretty cheap. He's got a nice match. matchup, pitching at home in a big park. Even a guy like Paul Blackburn, who I wouldn't normally recommend. You've got the Nationals, and he could certainly give you a decent outing. So all things to consider as you look for your pitcher this week. As we turn to the hitters, I'll tell you a little bit about how we calculate all this. So we've looked at their stats so far this season. We've calculated their Sorare points. We've got their Sorare points per plate appearance. We've got their plate appearances per game. And then how many games they have this game week. So everybody's got 3 this weekend. And so it's calculated an expected plate appearance based on the fact that the guys in green are all starters, everyday players. We're projecting them all at 3 games. If they're not in green, they're probably a guy who plays against either left-handed or right-handed pitching only. And in those cases, you just want to avoid those guys for the most part unless the matchups all work out for you. Good park factor for O'Neill at home in Boston. Right-handed hitter in Fenway is always a great add. 1.09 for the park factor. So Fenway's been playing as a great hitter's park. O'Neill's been just on fire. He's my top projected this weekend at 43.7. Only a couple guys over 40. Spencer Steer has been tearing it up. Mike Trout looks like vintage Mike Trout. 40 and 41 for those 2 guys. I think the best way to find value is to go over to Baseball Savant. You can search by xWOBA, which is your weighted on base average. This is just a great metric to figure out how well a guy's hitting the ball. It takes into account power, how he's getting on base, and then you also have the expected xWOBA. So this is kind of an interesting way to compare and contrast who's been getting lucky, who's been getting unlucky so far this season. So we got 50 at-bats or so to work with for most of these guys. I like to look at this xWOBA minus xWOBA. So xWOBA just says how should these numbers have fallen if everything was equal, and you can tell that some guys are getting really lucky, some guys are getting really unlucky to start the season. For example, Orlando Arcia is probably the luckiest hitter in the league so far this year. A xWOBA of 419, almost 100 points over the league average, but his expected xWOBA of 280, pretty well below league average level. If you played Arcia the first couple weeks, you're reaping the benefits, but I wouldn't expect it to continue. He's probably going down from here. Isaac Paredes, huge gap in between his xWOBA and his expected xWOBA. Volpe, Profar, Ellie De La Cruz, that's troubling. Tyler O'Neill, our top projected was a 550 xWOBA, 441 xWOBA. So he's not that good. He's been really good. Still 100 plus points above league average. He won't stay at the level that he's been at. So there's a good list of those. And then if you want to see who's been unlucky, so these are the values. These are the guys that people are probably getting frustrated with and dumping for cheap. You can see Francisco Lindor, who's been a great player for years. Obviously a great eye at the plate, doesn't strike out, 11%. Even when he's struggling, he's only striking out 11%, so he gets the bat on the ball. His xWOBA is 192, so way below league average. Expected xWOBA, though, above league average at 326. Huge gap up, so I expect him to get a lot better as the weeks go by. Encarnacion Strand in Cincinnati, playing in a great park. This guy's a good hitter. He's right around league average expected, but his actual xWOBA is way low. And then you got a guy like Ty France. You expect him to do better. Brandon Nimmo, expected 467. So 2 Mets up there. They've been struggling, obviously, offensively and as a team. But some of it's just bad luck. The craziest part to look at is guys like Yordan Alvarez, who he's got a xWOBA of 450, which is amazing. But his expected's even more amazing, 545. So despite getting off to a pretty good start, it's probably going to get better for him. But this is a good way to see some guys, a list of guys that may be worth picking up because others may be giving up on them. One thing to note here, I did notice that Ronald Acuna is the 100th ranked player in xWOBA this year. Obviously, he led the league in xWOBA last year. He was the MVP. He's still going to get you points because he steals a lot of bases, even when he's not hitting very well. But he did have a knee injury in spring training. There was some concern he was going to miss some time at the beginning of the year. He said, no, it's fine. Everything's good. He'll probably be fine, but this is a little troubling. So the 329, above league average, but he's the best player in the league, so you expect him to be way above league average. And his expected is pretty well below league average. So if you compare him to Kyle Tucker, who is also a really good hitter, similar xWOBAs for both of them, but Kyle Tucker is expected to hit 408, whereas Acuna is 288. So I'm a little concerned about Acuna. Obviously, if you have him, you're going to continue to start him, but I wouldn't be running to pick him up right now until he gets it straightened out a little bit. So things to consider. I have had a bunch of people reach out, ask me about releasing my information. They want to see my sheet. They want to see all the projections so they can make their lineups better. I think I'm going to start a Patreon, so I'll probably have a monthly subscription thing. You do like $5 a month, gets you access to the sheet. I'll keep it updated daily. You can come in, you can take a look at the upcoming game week. We'll add game week 6 shortly. And like I said, as the sample size increases, I think the projections will become more accurate. As always, if you need some help, you can hit me up on Discord or on Twitter. But Pascal Wisdom is the name on both of those. Great to be back. NBA content coming tomorrow morning, and then I'll have game week 6 prep coming out over the weekend.